Thank you very much for that warm welcome. How's everyone doing today? Okay, it's 2 a.m. my time. So if I could be up here, you guys can get a little bit more enthusiastic. How are we doing? There we go. All right. So I wanted to kind of start out by talking about the state of service management. I've been with Forrester just shy of 3 years, and every year we do a survey of IT decision makers to find out, kind of what's happening in their environment, what types of practices are they using, what are the results that they're getting. And so I pulled some very important metrics out of there related to service management. And I want to start with this first one, which is about managing incidents. You'll notice that a high percentage of organizations they have a formal incident management process. They have everything that they need to help manage it. If you look at that number, though, 25% are still experiencing a lot of outages that are impacting the business. So on one hand, we've invested in service management and incident management and all the constructs to help us manage incidents more effective, and yet we're still having significant amounts of disruption that's impacting our business. So disruption is everywhere, and we see a lot of public, broad global impact, something like CrowdStrike that recently happened, right? This was not something that was caused by your organization, but through the release of software coming into your environment, right? We're doing the best that we can to manage it using our ITIL best practices, and yet we're still experiencing this type of disruption. That disruption has a significant impact on the organization. There's a lot of unplanned work. How many of you spent a lot of extra hours to recover from outages recently, right? You're spending a lot of extra time trying to figure out what the problem is, how to recover. Then there's all of the work that we have to do to report back to management about what happened, how we can prevent it from happening again in the future. There's a lot of rework. Sometimes these are events that we've had happen in the past, but the corrective action that we took didn't prevent it from happening again. Increased costs and lower revenue. So the consequences of these outages are pretty significant. Now let's look at change management. Now this was the only data point that I could find where there was any difference between the Americas and EMEA. And you'll notice that it's only a 5% difference here. But when you're asked, do you have a formal change management process and how effective is it working? We've got 63% here in EMEA said yes. 32%, though, do not have a formal change management process. That still seems like a pretty significant number of organizations how are they managing changes without some sort of a formal change management process? Now, we've always lived under this idea that change management was a governance process, right? So if we have failed changes, our idea of how we better manage that is to bring in more governance, more policy. Unfortunately, when you have a policy document that's 232 pages long, it itself represents risk. Right? Policies are not the only thing that are going to help us to better manage risk. Well-defined processes don't help us to manage that risk. It mitigates some of it, but not all of it. And neither does a CAB. And our research proves that a CAB is only effective for very high impact changes. Everything else is better managed through team-level approvals, something that's much faster to get through the organization. So the unsuccessful ways in which we manage change, we see, okay, we've had unsuccessful change, we apply more policy, that slows everything down, which guess what? That means that the size of the release that we push through is larger. The larger the release, the more likely we are to create disruption. So this cycle of managing change solely through governance is not working for organizations. Here's another data point. And this one is actually quite surprising. So for the first time in my career, and I've been in ITIL, in IT Service Management, for a very long time, this is the first time that we can say that the CMDB is working. We actually have a CMDB and it's working in the organization. The reason why it's working, though, is that it's fully automated. All of our discovery, we keep the information up to date by using automation, and we have a lot of organizations that are reporting success now. And that information is incredibly valuable to helping incident management to diagnose and find out where the root causes of problems are. So we've got much better information. But as you saw earlier, we're doing more with less. And unless we're not in a commercial enterprise, this dynamic is just not going to change, right? Businesses are always trying to save money somewhere, and ultimately they come to IT and say, you have too many people. You need to get rid of some more. And so we just keep piling more work on the same amount of people, and we're having troubles managing incidents and managing the risk associated with change. Now, all this work is also incredibly labor intensive, right? There's a lot of communication that has to happen. We have to join up in a Teams meeting and start figuring out what happened in the environment. Let's do some sort of a hierarchical analysis or a time frame analysis where we're breaking it down, what happened at each step to figure out where the root cause was. Have you ever been on a call that lasted more than 8 hours? I have been. They're painful, right? So this is a very resource-intensive way to manage the IT infrastructure. So we have 3 significant problems in IT service management today. One is complexity. And I find that this is a little surprising to me because the whole point of investing in ITIL processes and purchasing a service management system was to do what? Help us to reduce complexity. And yet the systems themselves can often be very complex to manage, to use. How many of you have had to put a ticket in to get something fixed? Right? That ticket goes in and it sits in a work queue and you don't know when it's going to get done. These things are quite frustrating for our end users, but they create a lot of queuing effect, right? If I've recently gone to an airport, right? Queuing is what everything about flying, the experience is all about queuing. But if you're late for a flight, you want to hurry up and get past everybody else. How successful does that work in a system that does nothing but queue all day long? It's just like our tickets, right? We put a ticket in a queue, but if we want something done much faster, it's very difficult to break the rules, very difficult to get the work done. So we're still in a very complex environment. The other problem is cost. Not just the cost of running IT, but the systems themselves that we use to manage IT are incredibly expensive. Incredibly expensive. And they're probably all in the IT budget. Because we started off with a smaller system to help us manage maybe around the service desk and incidents and changes. And now it's grown into this massive application across the environment. And the cost is pretty significant. It's helping us to manage complexity, but the budget is only in IT, even though we may be using it for the lines of business and even connecting in with developers. And the third thing is resources. It's a hugely resource-intensive way to manage our infrastructure. So IT service management is changing. First of all, we're shifting into something we call enterprise service management, and I think we saw some of this in the presentation earlier. We have this very rich set of capabilities within an IT service management platform. We can track activities, we can do alerting and communication, we've got metrics and reporting and dashboards and all of this very rich capabilities. It makes complete and total sense for us to apply this to areas within the business, especially if those areas of the business are underserved. So if they're doing work today through email or they've got forms and SharePoint and they're trying to manage their work that way, they have no idea how much work they're doing, how long it takes for them to get the work done. So putting that type of work into an IT service management system makes total sense. So as we begin to expand the footprint of our IT service management system, and we're serving businesses like HR, we're doing payroll, maybe facilities, we're now expanding that footprint, the budget should span out to those different business units as well. Now, this is just one of our reports that we do at the end of our evaluation of the IT service management market, which is to look at unique use cases. I think it's quite interesting. They're using it to track voter registration machines in the US. Who would ever think you would use an IT service management system for something like that? But with it being an unmanaged process without a whole lot of rigor, putting that type of process into an IT service management system makes a lot of sense. So we see this expansion, right? This core capability of the IT service management system is being applied to the business, to the lines of business, but it's also going out to the developers. Now, one key area that we see in the business is called collaborative work management, right? If you think about it, today, like a computer, an asset, a laptop, or a desktop machine, decades ago, they were very, very expensive. So we put barcodes on them, we track them, and in many cases, they had to be depreciated over a period of time as the asset lost value, right? That's how important those investments were. Today, not that significant, right? But if we look at, what if we have a PowerPoint that helped us go out and win an engagement with a client? That's a valuable asset to the organization, but they're often locked in places like SharePoint. Nobody can find it. Or you make duplicates of it, and now you've got two of the best presentation, and nobody knows which one is the right one or the master one, right? So organizations are now using enterprise service management platforms to manage their digital assets, as well as their IT assets. So this core capability down here in a very small font, anybody can read that? Yeah, it's intentionally supposed to be small. But there are some very core capabilities there that are really important that serve all areas of the business. Knowledge management, artificial intelligence, and asset management. These things are at the core of what we do within IT service management, and they're hugely valuable for the lines of business and out to the developers. Now, another huge influence here, and this is again another trend that we're seeing, is that we're no longer separating ITOM from IT service management. That the data that we're getting from monitoring is so incredibly important to the success of IT service management that these two separate domains are merging. And what's making that even more successful is through the introduction of AI ops. So now we're using AI to interpret what we're finding in our log files and bringing things to humans' attention that could prevent things from happening in the environment. So we're beginning to see the market not just spread into the lines of the business and into development, but we're also seeing the footprint of what we're bringing in, right? We're bringing in the monitoring and that information directly into our IT service management platforms. So this is really forcing all of us to kind of break out of that traditional IT service management mindset. And I drank the Kool-Aid. I started out with ITIL version 2. I was an instructor for many years. You know, the ideas and the concepts that we learned and that we reinforced within organizations were incredibly helpful. They took us from pretty much a non-professional entity within the organization to a professional level. They gave us a common set of language, right? But now we're moving away from this as our primary core focus within IT organizations because it's no longer serving the modern needs of the organization. So where do we go from here? First of all, there is a great need for speed within organizations, right? The business entity, they want to be able to adapt and make corrections according to what's happening into the market. IT wants to be responsive to that and say, okay, we can bring in change that quickly. But often in an IT service management environment, we have release and development teams that are bringing in and they want to push more change in more frequently, or smaller changes more frequently. And then you have this very lethargic IT service management factory approach that's saying, whoa, 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 if it's not in a ticket and it hasn't been to the cab, it's not going in. And so one is meant for speed and the other one seems to be like the airport when you really want to hurry to get through, right? It just doesn't work in that kind of that paradigm. So modernization, now we have to begin looking in new places. Things like product teams, embracing agile methods. I think that the AI ops is a huge opportunity. There's also a need for doing knowledge management better than we've done it in the past. But where do we start with modernization? I think the most important thing that we always need to remember, and this is probably the most important slide I've ever learned from the ITIL framework, which is the guiding principles. Start where you are, keep it simple, make it practical. But no matter what we focus on from this point forward, it needs to answer the value proposition for organizations. Why are we doing it, and what value are we going to get from it? Change shouldn't be this broad, sweeping thing. It should be very iterative. We need to be responsive to the needs of the organization, which means we don't want the pendulum to swing all the way out. We want it to be incremental. Make sure that what we're doing and how we're modernizing the environment actually serves the needs of the business. We need to also continue to focus on service thinking about things holistically. It's one of the reasons why in ITIL version 4, we moved to practices instead of processes. It's about thinking about things holistically. I want to know, is the value stream working? Not just the process. The process is something that helps us to manage the work, but is the value actually getting to the customer? Is it getting to the business? Because that's what the processes are supposed to help happen, but we need to be focused on that overall value stream, the greater entity of value that we can provide to the business. Now, agile methods, whether you're an agile shop for development or not, agile still, the core principles that came from the agile community are still very valuable today. Things like, minimizing risk, using the right governance, the difference between what we do in IT service management around governance and what they do within the agile community around governance and risk are slightly different. We have different operating parameters. So it's time for us to stop looking at change management the way that we've always looked at it and start to embrace some agile thinking about how we can embrace change. Doing things like getting rid of the cab, not completely, but just for those bigger, more significant changes. Figuring out ways to get automated approvals through our system. And for some of you, that may give you the shivers, right? The thought of allowing something to go in without a human to actually look at it and review. And I would argue, because I've been to those CAB meetings, how much are we really managing the risk when someone's checking the boxes and said, yep, I did this, yep, I did that? Is that really helping us to manage that risk? So applying agile thinking to change management or to incident management or to anything management that we're doing today will help us to look at it and evaluate where our improvement opportunities are and move the needle forward. Remember, there's that need for speed. If your organization is still telling people, put it in the ticket or it doesn't happen, you're kind of missing the boat here. Yes, Tracking our work is incredibly important. Putting it into tickets is very important, but it shouldn't be the primary driver of innovation within your organization. Now, automation is incredibly important, and we know this. Unless you are under huge government restrictions or mandated governance, everyone here has probably got some amount of automation and AI already today. I'm not talking Gen AI, I'm just talking the plain old vanilla AI machine learning. We know that this can help provide value to organizations. I cannot tell you how many times I've had calls with clients where I ask them, how are you automating in the environment? That's in next year's budget. And it just keeps bumping to next year's budget. Part of it is we don't have the skills to understand how to do automation effectively. And the second thing is, yes, it costs money to do a lot of the automation that we should be doing, but we're so caught up into the day-to-day firefighting that we don't put the money in to do something that will help us balance that do more with less. So if you're at the bottom end here and you're struggling today to keep up with the do more with less kind of dynamic, imagine where you're going to be 5 years from now if you're not investing in some amount of automation to help you manage that workload. Automation can also help you to be incredibly more proactive, right? Not just being able to provide better services and maybe auto recovery to your end users, but the proactive remediation that can be driven through things like AI ops, where we can sense a certain pattern is occurring, and in the past, that pattern happened, and eventually the service went down. So what can we do right now? We see the pattern happening again to auto-correct that situation. This is where your observability and applying AI to all of that monitoring, that rich data, can really help organizations to proactively remediate issues before they even happen. We can also apply AI to change management, and we've seen this within some of the service management suites that are out there. The ability to take the human out of the risk calculation. You're still probably checking boxes and saying, yes, I did the backup plan and we've done the testing. But by using AI, and in particular machine learning, we can actually say, okay, has this team failed in the past? And if so, how frequently? Has this part of the infrastructure failed in the past? And how frequently? So we're using machine learning to kind of give us a better estimate about what's happening in the environment so that we can flag issues that should have human attention or attention before being put into the environment. So by using AI, and now I've seen some generative AI being brought into this to make it even better, we're actually improving the way that change management does the approval process. If you get a really good score from the credit rating and the person has checked all the boxes, why not allow that change to go through? Why does it have to go to the cab? Right? So we need to be looking for ways for us to improve that. Another thing, and again, and I said this because of the expansion into collaborative work management, but asset management really needs to be managing a lot more than what we're managing today. If you're one of those organizations that now has a CMDB that's working, you've got great data in there, you need to be thinking about what other types of assets could we be tracking for the business that could provide potential value. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention employee experience, because putting something into a ticket is not the best employee experience. I don't know anybody that enjoys that experience. It's just something that we know we have to do in order to get the service that we need. By applying automation and investing in the right types of systems and tools, we can actually improve that employee experience. Not just in the chat bots, right? That kind of that direct interface where now we're seeing much more conversation and much more common language where I can type in my question. My favorite example is always my stepfather, the internet's down, right? We know the internet is not down, but that's his context, right? So if he were to type something into a search, you would want a response that came back that matched his level of understanding of technology. We're almost there. We're seeing significant value coming through those chat interfaces. But it's everything from our enterprise service management tools to the unified endpoint management, the CMDB. There's a lot of things out there that are going to come together that are going to provide a much better employee experience. And we should be looking at it, measuring it, and improving it as we move forward. Now, I would be also remiss if I didn't talk about AI a little bit, right? AI has been a very, let's just say it's been a catchy phrase lately with Gen AI. But I want to talk about something in particular as it relates to AI, and that's the power of knowledge combined with artificial intelligence. We hear a lot about hallucinations, right? We're expecting technology to be 100% accurate. Yet I go and I'll ask a coworker a question, and I think I've had coworkers that have hallucinated and given me the wrong answer at times, right? It's not like humans have perfect knowledge either. One of the reasons why technology hallucinates is because we have so much bad knowledge. We have not had really good practices that have made sure that the stuff that we have stored in systems is reliable and accurate to support decision making. We have a lot of it, which might be good for training, but it's not necessarily good for supporting decision making. But when we can combine really good knowledge with the power of AI, very good things can happen. Now, this comes from a report that I wrote a couple years back called, it was a really bad name, but Stop Starting Over with Knowledge Management. It was all about agile knowledge management. Again, taking those agile principles and applying them into one of our core service management processes, which was knowledge management. And I've been an advocate for knowledge management my entire career. And this is the very first time in my career that I say to customers, instead of saying knowledge management is all about your people, your process, and your culture. I don't even mention the tool, because I don't care what tool you're using at that point. If you can't get your people to buy into the process, you're not going to be successful. Why? Because it's a lot of work. And it's a lot of work in addition to what else you're doing. So a lot of people resist actually putting knowledge into systems because it takes so long to do. But now, with generative AI, we can make knowledge management successful for the very first time. Technology, you saw it earlier, can draft the first draft of a knowledge article. How many times have we had to say to our agents, please put that into a knowledge article so that someone else can use it? And it just doesn't get done. We don't have time. Remember, we're in that do more with less. So I'm on to the next call. If I think about it, I'll do it 2 weeks from now. Unfortunately, that knowledge article is needed now. 2 weeks from now, the demand for it will be much less. So using generative AI, we are now able to take something that should be an agile practice and accelerate it tremendously, creating drafts, using AI prompts for governance on knowledge articles, right? It has to follow our standard. It has to have our brand. It has to have our tone. These are things that can be easily applied using generative AI to a knowledge solution. Create a title, create a summary. These are the strengths of something like generative AI. So when you combine knowledge management with AI, you have a very, very powerful dynamic in your organization. And let's not forget how we got here. LLMs today are where they are because we trained it on one of the largest corpuses of public knowledge, the internet. That's what allowed us to make that leap couple years ago with the capabilities of LLMs. When you bring a model like that into your organization, your goal is to take your internal content and make that model even better. This is where we get a lot of the hallucinations, because your data is flawed. There's just not really good data there to support. I had a client that I was talking to the other day. They said, Julie, it's only about 80% accurate. And I started to walk through, okay, what have you done with the LLM? Well, we got this, model from the industry and we brought it in and we started running it. All they're using is the summarization capabilities, which are pretty strong. But they're asking for a very specific and complex use case for the summary capabilities. And they're getting 80% accuracy with no training. I'm like, that's really good. And the horror on his face is we can't use it. Right? We can't use it because it's only 80% accurate. We're spending most of our time editing and improving what the machines are creating. So knowledge and training of the LLMs is going to be very important. So AI is automating our knowledge management practices, and knowledge management is enabling our AI. Another first for me in modern times is that we've always kind of talked about knowledge management as an explicit practice, where stuff that can be easily codified and written down, put into a document, put into a system of record, that's been our primary focal point for knowledge management for forever. With these new technologies and adding AI into the loop, with what we talked about earlier, these very powerful AI agents that are capable of acting and providing, taking some of the rote work and behavior that you do and automate that within your workflow. I'm now asking questions. It's doing work for me. I'm posing new questions. It's like this collaborator in the background helping me get my work done. But I'm also, through my questioning and interactions with it, giving it new knowledge. This is tacit knowledge. This is knowledge as we're experiencing it, and as we are developing new experiences, we have the potential for the very first time to begin capturing tacit knowledge. And for anybody out there that's a knowledge management geek like I am, this is a pretty big deal. So with the power of AI, with the right knowledge in your organization, we see our interfaces becoming frictionless, meaning it's going to be so much easier to use technology as we move forward, because we'll be able to have more conversational type interactions. It'll be hyper-personalized. It will know who you are, and it will be able to respond and follow a conversation with you, remembering what you talked to it about earlier in the day. And it should be a lot more simplified. Now, I don't know about you, but I think this is an exciting time. It's kind of like my superpower, that AI bot behind the scenes, but it also is a little scary and intimidating. Am I the only one that's got a problem with AI? And I'm worried about the data that I'm putting into it and how that data is being exchanged with other LLMs out there in the market and all of that. AI has a trust problem. Many of your peers here in this room probably have very, very risk-adverse progress towards adopting AI. We may be running a pilot, but it's not going into production at any point in time. I highly encourage you to have conversations with each other for the rest of the day when you have time to network and talk to people. Ask them, how are you applying this? Are you getting any benefit? Where are the early use cases where you're seeing value from it? Because it will come. We are experiencing some difficulties at the very beginning getting the results that we want, but it doesn't negate the power of what happened 2 years ago and where we are moving as an industry moving forward. Automation and AI is going to continue to advance our practices in IT service management. So some critical things for you to think about as I wrap up here. First of all, think about how you can better build knowledge capacity. This is going to be incredibly relevant and incredibly important to your success moving forward. If you have good quality knowledge, you have one of the most important building blocks to taking advantage of AI. The other thing is you need to train your people. Now is the time to start getting people just the basic skills, whether it's prompt engineering. There's only going to be a window so big of when prompt engineering is going to actually be valuable. But the lessons and the learning that your people can get by understanding what prompt engineering is and how these technologies work, it's incredibly valuable as they move forward in your adoption of new projects and new initiatives, that they have this foundation level that they can build off of. So make sure you're getting your people trained, get them the right information that they need to be successful. Another really important thing that you can do as a leader in your organization is to understand that none of this will happen without trust. It's a very important ingredient. I am a knowledge worker. All of you are knowledge workers. You are the only one that knows whether or not you are contributing your best knowledge, whether you're giving your best answer. And that only happens if you trust that by giving that, you get something back. So in an environment where sharing is appreciated, where collaboration is the first way of doing business, not something that we go, kind of lean into as we're trying to solve something, but it is the way that our organization works. People are valued for sharing, not for what they know, but for sharing. That's an environment where people are more willing to contribute their knowledge and be part of a collaborative system. Without that trust, you never know, and I guarantee you people are going to be withholding their knowledge, or often they will give knowledge that is imperfect because it still creates dependency on them as a person to figure it out. And keep the human in the loop, right? Hallucinations, whatever the failures are going to be, what's important right now is to begin experimenting with technologies that can help improve the way that we work, that can gain us some efficiencies. Again, we're doing more with less. We're caught up into this dynamic. If we can get just a little bit more productive by using these technologies, fantastic. But don't expect AI to just be able to run on its own. Remember to keep the human in the loop. Have it be their partner, not a replacement. And I can tell you this because I can see it happening already with my own children. Critical thinking skills are more important today than they ever have been in the past. Just because you can look something up on the internet or ask ChatGPT a question and get an answer does not make you smart, right? So being able to look at that answer and say, that's correct or it's not correct. Or maybe I should validate that and find more than one source so that I understand if it's correct. These are critical thinking skills. They're going to be incredibly important to all knowledge workers, especially knowledge workers coming into your environment. Make sure that you have training that helps to continue to develop critical thinking skills, because they're not getting them so much within the education environment. And engage your people. You've got really smart people. Engage them in helping you get the work done. So just as I wrap up, I want to say this is a journey, and I hope all of you envision this journey as something fun to be on. This is the first time in my lifetime where I can look at technology and go, wow, this is really amazing. Now, we've had some amazing things happen over a period of time, right? We had the internet, we had cell phones. These were always amazing things, but there's something about what we're doing right now with artificial intelligence and how it's changing the way that we're working. I can see that new things are coming, amazing things are coming, and I hope you enjoy this journey. So I'm going to open it up for any questions that you may have. And please connect with me on LinkedIn, follow my research. Any questions? Uh-oh.
First of all, thank you, Julie Mohr. Thank you very much. Very insightful, and as I asked for, like a perspective that we as a vendor, with looking at a single customer, probably wouldn't get in that breadth. So, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Will you be around for questions later on?
Of course.
Because now it looks like nobody has the courage to ask them here. So maybe they have the possibility to do it later on.
Sure.
So
Sounds
thank
good.
you once again,
Thank you.
Julie.
Thank you.